Hello. So, welcome. This idea was born yesterday during my debut, mini debut, um, about learning about discussing various topics, interest, and just talking about hobbies, about science, whatever there is. And hopefully, the goal to realize that learning can be fun, to hopefully undo the damage that bad teachers have done in the past. Give people back the joy of learning. So that is Talk Tuesday. That is what this series is about. I'm hoping Tuesday if there are topics, or if topics are big enough that might need several sessions. That being said, I am going to start with a topic I know pretty well, and that is languages, linguistics. Something to start with. Me switch over and move myself. Oh, so handwriting needs a bit right now. I'm not used to writing on, but in really strange word. Many people have this word before. Not a lot of people actually. Hey, Tater the possum. Good morning. Welcome. How are you doing? Just getting some notes started here. Session. That's good to hear. All right. I hope you are looking forward, at least a little bit, to learning about linguistics, just the very basics to what is actually. Today is Talk Tuesday, where I talk about various topics of interest, um, with discussions or with you can ask questions, and mainly the goal of this series is to bring joy back to learning, and and maybe as a side effect, learn something about various topics of interest as well. Sort of an educational stream, and topic for today is linguistics, simply because that's the topic I am most familiar with. So that's one I'm starting with. Oh, awesome. Glad to hear that. Yeah, I was just really just at the very start going into what even is linguistics. A lot of people may have heard this word before but don't really know what it means or what it's describing. So, very basically, linguistics is the study of human language in all of its forms. And that if that seems very very broad to you, that's because it is. Right? Human language is incredibly complex, is intrinsically tied to us being human. So there is a lot going on. So there are a lot of subfields for linguistics. There is one that or one of the fields that I studied, that may have popped up every now and then. Historical linguistics or comparative linguistics, which is the study of languages in the past and how they changed and how they um, relate to one another. Hello, Goliath. Hello, nice to see you here. How are you doing? I hope you got your notebook ready. We are delving into a very basic intro at first of what linguistics actually, right? So, historical or comparative linguistics, it's called historical because it deals with languages in the past, or comparative because you are comparing various languages with each other to see if they are related or not, what degree. And there are some fields. I was thinking about that, but I wasn't sure how to fill that 15 to 30 minutes. I considered that, um, which is why I kind of chose the bad middle ground of going slowly uh for a bit. I was thinking sitting here for like 15 minutes with some people and being like, yeah, we're still waiting. I i don't know if that's people would stick around, you know what I mean? um I did consider that though, um and I probably should have. You're right. So I'll just finish taking a couple notes and then not necessarily talk too much about it, but then I will have this finished, and then more people come, I can talk more in detail about. That's not how you. uh, you know what? You are amazing. Um, I'm. Dang, I need to like pay you for this or something. All of this remake advice. um, yeah, I'm. That's a very good point. I am that the reason I'm just sitting here right now is because I am a little bit overwhelmed by this realization. Um, Despite everything, I am still fairly new. Still streaming, and structured streaming. Yeah. So yeah, and I do have to say though, I suck at small talk. I suck at chatting. um, I guess that's something I have to learn as well. In that case, though, how was your day, or how is your? I don't know. Do you have like morning or afternoon? Almost evening here. I had some good food. Yeah, true, true. I guess it's practice. I am learning. I think it's very on top. Very obvious that I'm still learning. Um, yeah, true, true. That's a good point. um, on that note, though, I do think, yeah, I could go a little repetition legitimizes. That's a very good point. I like that. Repetition legitimizes. That's a good one. Um, and I should know because I've been teaching the same things over and over and over. Back when I was teaching it, it's literally literally every every semester or so, or every year, I would teach the same thing to a new group. So I guess, what was my linguistics major? So um in my bachelor's, it was historical linguistics. Um, that was the big one, and then in my master's, I did language acquisition, foreign language. I, I think so. Acquisition. Um, so I did study this topic a lot, and I discuss it with a lot of people online just out of interest. Um, and I figured not a lot of people know about it. Why not? What's my favorite language to study? That's um that's really hard to say. Like, if like there's two things or two different ways to study a language, I guess. So one of them is to look at it from a linguistics point of view, and see how the language actually functions. And another is to actually learn the language to use. And my well, I won't say favorite, but one of the most interesting languages so far that I have encountered is Mandarin, from a linguistics point of view, because it is strange. It breaks a lot of the conventions that other languages follow, and it it does a lot of very funky stuff with like word order and sentence structure, um, that defies convention. No, 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 no. You're fine. You're fine. Um, I appreciate all of the input and all of the advice you're giving. It is valuable, definitely. Um, and and right now, in terms of streaming, I am uh I'm starting at a way lower point than classroom teaching, right? So, any advice you can give, amazing and very appreciated. So don't worry, you're good. You're good. I'm thankful. I really am. Yeah, that's and I guess I was I was too focused on the topic and forgot about all the framework. Um, Lesson for next time. And that's what we're all here for, right? We're here. Um, but yeah, like I said, my favorite language to look at from a linguistic point of view is probably Mandarin or one of my favorite languages. Um, in terms of learning a language, any and all. Yeah, I do believe so. I did right. I hope that this is the very first. If not, then I can just put a very big. This is the first one. Um, yes, I don't own Photoshop, and I don't actually know how to use these programs too. That's another thing I have to learn. I'm just used to my old school writing on a whiteboard. Actually, this is Krita. It doesn't show yet. It's Krita. Yeah, very very similar, but it's free. um, so that's the one I've toyed with the most. I I kind of know how to do simple image editing with Photoshop, but I don't own Photoshop right now. Um, Let me open the blinds real quick because it's a bit dark in here. All right. My calligraphy. Um, Not great. uh, I'm interested in it, but I've never really learned it. Well, I've learned a little bit of Chinese calligraphy, which is a bit harder to emulate on here. Brush tool have uh oh, that's too. Oh, okay. I get how the pressure works. I suck at this right now because I'm not used to drawing on it. Eh, no, I'm no. This is disgraceful. Um, uh, I guess like I've learned a little bit of Western calligraphy. Um, I could. Is there a calligraphy pen on here? Maybe. Must be. Um, but yeah, I've mainly learned Chinese calligraphy, like writing with a brush, like an actual brush. I'm not sure if there's. Ah, or is this just. No, that doesn't look like. Ah, well, I'll have to see. I'll flat pen. You're a flat pen. We're now completely off topic, but that's okay. This one? Okay, it does have pressure. The size is does have pressure, but it's a bit odd because it uses pressure. I guess I could, yeah. Like I'll keep improving the visuals. What I did do though is yeah, definitely. What I did do though is on my about page, all of the banner headings thingies, I don't know what to call them, with the pixel art calligraphy and the scroll background, I did those myself. So I do like calligraphy. Definitely. It's a thing. Hey, Gore. Hello. How are you doing? Nice to see you here. I hope you are ready and willing to learn a little bit about linguistics today. No, no, this is great. Um, a lot of good ideas that I probably wouldn't have thought of myself because I'm bad at branding. Um, I really am. I'm I'm very much a function over form kind of person. So anything that's form, I have trouble thinking of. So a readable black letter with text to. Yes, um, but I like the flexibility of writing with my hand. Um, it's it it flows naturally. Because I'm so used to just teaching while writing things on a whiteboard and such. Um, it it allows me to just go with the flow and not have to think about what I'm doing. S- I did think about that, and then I realized, no, I do prefer writing with my hand, and I hope my handwriting is okay. I think once I get more used to writing on the tablet, it should become more and more legible as I go on. But yeah, we have successfully bridged half an hour. So I guess we could use this time to start diving a bit into the topic, and then if other people come, then sure, then they can also learn a little bit about linguistics. But yeah, as I was saying, so back to topic. Linguistics, the study of human language, but it is a very broad field. Yes, definitely. I will have to learn that at some. But first, I'll have to learn how to write on a tablet. Tablet. never write. So yeah, linguistics is a very, very broad field that covers a lot of different things. Historical comparative linguistics, where you look at languages in the past and how they relate to each other. Sociolinguistics, which is linguistics in society, how language is used. Psycholinguistics, which is how language relates to thoughts. Neurolinguistics, the actual brain portions responsible for processing language. Language acquisition, right? How people learn language. And then, of course, there is the base linguistics itself. Ada or Ada. Sorry. Hey, nice to see you here. How are you doing? Ada, it was right the first time. Okay, good, 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 good. Yeah, because I keep hearing Petri say Ada, I think, but yeah. Oh, okay, then I will say Ada. Ada. Yeah, welcome. It's nice to see you. We are just talking about the field of linguistics and what it actually is, because it's one of those ethereal, not ethereal, these arcane subjects that you hear about every once in a while, but you don't really know what uh, what it does or what you're actually studying. So structures of language. This is the base linguistics that you may have heard of if people talk about semantics, or very broadly grammar, and this is also what's being said. And the uh, the use of language is also part of the study of language. Um, right. So with all these very, very broad fields, it's impossible to talk about everything. Obviously, it's also because all of these fields can become very specialized. Right, neuro linguistics, for instance, you have actual neurologists. That's actually an interesting point. Speaking in code and emoji, which is which is something you read a lot in the press, but that's because journalists don't understand linguistics. Right? Um, Emoji are not a language. Very important. They are not language. Um, so where was I? Reject modernity. Return to hieroglyphs. Um, they are not. I'll actually address this point right now. Emojis are not the new hieroglyphics. The reason being, they don't have unified readings. If you look at hieroglyphics, or if you look at what is called a logographic script, this canvas is surprisingly small. So, logographic script, which is what hieroglyphics were in the beginning of their lifespan, right? They later on changed, but hieroglyphics and, for example, cuneiform or Chinese characters are a logographic script. Logo meaning idea or some unit of sense, right? And graphic meaning writing, and or logos, right? Sense, where every single character has a unified fixed meaning or a very small number of unified fixed meaning that you can then string together to form uh, to represent natural language, right? So um, if you for instance have in Chinese a character like that, kind of whack, but okay. This means I, and there is basically no meaning, no other meaning for that, right? Whereas in emoji, if you have something like this, okay, it means happy. Yes, exactly. The meaning needs to be unambiguous, and you're not supposed to interpret the character. If you're interpreting anything, you're interpreting the overall message, right? But if I put like emoji, like I don't know, a car, right? And then I don't know this, like what is this? What am I saying here? Death blossoms? I think I've heard of that before, but I'm not sure. Oh, I'm happily on my way home. That is one possible interpretation. It could also mean I have a new car that I'm driving to a friend's house, right? Or I used to be happy and then I drove back home and now I'm not. Or or maybe you are happy, right? That you are driving while I am sitting at home. There's there is no, and you cannot verbalize this, right? You can say smiling emoji, car emoji, house emoji, but we don't talk like that. Go Nick. Hello, thank you for following. Welcome to the guild. I hope you join us for many adventures. Exactly, emojis are understood differently depending on age and many other things. There's a very infamous crash. Ah, yeah, crash blossoms. Yeah, um, that's crash blossoms are actually a that's still that's the whole point where you're interpreting the overall message or where the structure of a sentence leads you. It's not where you're arguing over what every individual piece means. And many languages have that, but they don't have that as a fundamental feature. Whereas crash blossoms, I forgot the entire sentence, was crash blossoms um, are also, I think they're also known as garden path sentences. Let me just check if I can. Crash blossoms. Get the example sentence. Uh, yeah. So it was from a very poorly worded headline, right? Crash blossoms. Which, yeah, thank you. Violinist linked to JAL crash blossoms. And with the way I just read that, you probably realize what's happening. Blossoms is a verb in this case, right? Violinist linked to JAL crash is now blossoming. But if you first look at that, it's like violinist linked to JAL crash blossoms. Like what are crash blossoms? Like what's going on? So that's when you have words that can have multiple different types, like a verb and a noun in this case. Um, and you get confused by what is going on in the sentence. Um, that's a crash blossom, or also called a garden path sentence. Infant pulled from wrecked car involved in short police pursuit. Um, I think that's something else. I think that is a different thing. That is not a crash blossom. That is a where the reference is unclear. Wow, these are a lot of topics coming in all at once. Let me go through them one by one. So yeah, crash blossoms, like I said, are where sentences are poorly structured or poorly worded, and then you're not clear. Hold on, what is actually going on here? But languages don't have that as a fundamental feature, right? Crash blossoms are so uh, memorable because they're strange. Yeah, exactly. An ambiguous antecedent. Exactly. Um, so that's why we notice them, because this is where language is used poorly, or sentence structure and such is used poorly. But it's not a fundamental feature of the language. Emoji have this ambiguity and this interpretation as a fundamental feature, right? And that's the whole point. That's why emoji are not actually an actual writing system. They are a way to shorten down words inside a broader context, or to convey certain emotions, which is necessary when communicating and writing. Um, but they are not a complete script on their own. And I realize that this pops up in media every now and then. It's like, oh, emoji are gonna replace all languages, and so it's like, no, 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 no. Yeah, it would be funny, but I think we would lose quite a bit. So yes, this is the whole Crash Blossoms thing. Um, and yes, emojis are understood differently depending on age and culture and such. Um, or just exposure to the internet, right? If you've never seen a certain emoji before, you might think, hold on, what is this trying to convey? Because you've never seen the context it's used in, right? So emoji are extremely context dependent. So that's this topic. Uh and yeah, so there were a couple of examples of how language can go wrong. The infant pulled from wrecked car involved in short police pursuit. That is right. In this case, what was involved in the police pursuit in this sentence? Infant pulled from wrecked car involved in short police pursuit. Hey, hey, Foxanda. Hello, nice to see you here. How are you doing? Do you want? I've never actually asked this. Do you want to be called Foxanda or Rat Fox, or please let me know what you prefer to be called. Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yes, exactly. I love spicy. Red. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I will call you Red. Um, yes. So the infant was involved. Like, was the infant chased by the police? Because the infant was involved in the police pursuit, or was the wrecked car involved in the police, right? So that's that's ambiguous antecedent, which is um how do you infant have this and then yes, exactly. Pulled from pulled from, and then you have wrecked car, right? And then involved in police. So what does this involved refer to? Is it referring to the car, or is it referring to the infant? And it's not clear. It's probably clear from the context, right? It's very likely the car. Um, but just the way the sentence is structured, this is not clear what exactly the antecedent, the first, um, the first coming, or the what's the opposite of following? The preceding, what the preceding piece of this linked information is, and and things like this happen in all languages, by the way, um, because language at the end of the day is molded on our thoughts, and human thoughts are sometimes messy and ambiguous, and so these examples are from English, but this type of thing tends to happen in all languages because humans are humans. So this yeah, these kind of garden path sentences or ambiguity or not sure what piece is related to what um, happens everywhere. While we're at it, as are there other questions? Do you guys have questions or anything you heard of that you want to get clarified or explained? That's why math is the superior language. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But humans are too dumb to talk purely in math. Sadly, um, so we need to make do with our messy natural languages. Maybe one day when we have I don't know, evolved calculators in our brains or something, then then we can communicate in pure math. We'll know world peace. I don't know. Um, yeah. Let me just add something here. Exactly. Beam pure logic at each other. Um, right. So yeah, the reason um you like if you do hear about linguistics, the reason why the like if the media, for instance, portrays things about linguistics, why it's so bad most of the time is because linguistics is a really broad field, and you might get newsworthy bits and pieces out of any possible field. If you hear about stories of people who had strokes or who had some sort of brain injury and they lost the ability to speak a certain language or suddenly started speaking a different language or something, that is neurolinguistic, because it deals with the brain as an organ, right? As with the actual nervous system, neurology of it. If you look at, oh, how is language used in societies among people, right? A new word popping up, internet slang, or dialects. That is all social linguistic. And then you get the whole, oh, language influences thoughts, and people who speak this language don't know, cannot envision the future, or stupid things like that, which by the way is not true, right? Humans are humans. It doesn't matter what language we speak. That is psycholinguistic, right? The relationship of language and thoughts. You don't hear a lot about historical linguistics, even though it's pretty fascinating. Um, and you don't hear too much about language acquisition, which again is pretty fascinating because every person goes through language acquisition. We all learn a first language or maybe multiple first languages as babies, and we might later in life learn several other foreign languages as we go on. And how that process happens, and what is done, or what happens in our brain, or learning, um well, let me just finish that thought, is basically the study and how first and second and third differs. A lot of overlap. uh yes, exactly. um so long time no see is comes from Chinese. Yeah, exactly. That's there is a lot of overlap. There's also overlap with other disciplines outside, right? So here is like neurology, obviously. Here is psychology, very obviously. Here's sociology. So I'm just scrolling right now, but cable's in the way. Yes. So a lot of it is very interdisciplinary. Here is a history and archaeology, etc., and so on. Yes, and in between, there's also a lot of overlap. So long time no see, right? The phrase long time no see. If you think about it, this is this is weird. Long time no see. If you think about it from an English standpoint, you would never construct a language like that in a language, a sentence. Sorry, a sentence like that in English, right? This is long time, okay, but no see. What? It's been a long time since we last saw each other, or something along those lines, right? But you wouldn't create a sentence like this just in English, and that's because this actually comes from Chinese. This comes from a common Chinese phrase. Um, 哎，好久不见, which means which is literally this, right? A very long time no see, and that's exactly what it is. And in Chinese, the sentence makes perfect sense. Right? That's exactly what you say when you haven't seen someone in a while, and then you say, "Oh, we haven't seen each other in a while," right? Um, but then this was it is this literal, yes. Um, and then this was taken and just translated, or this is a calque. This is what's called a calque, right? Where you just literally take words from one language and put them into another language, or transform them into another language, and then you get strange sentences like this in English, which you won't construct using English rules, but which make perfect sense in the origin language, right? So you get things like this, and that's also very very interesting to see how languages interact with each other. And that's why also this is here. On, let me drag. This is why this is called comparative linguistics, because you compare languages with each other and see how they influence one another. And again, things like this appear all over the place. A lot of words and such are taken from other languages, loan words, entire sentences, um, or very interestingly, where entire phrases are turned into words. So, for instance, in English, to get some fun examples, the English word alarm, where do you think this comes from? I mean, it is an English word, yes, but it comes from a different language, and it's not a word from a different language. Not like you just took, yes, it comes from French, definitely. A lot of English words come from French. But in French, you didn't have a single word, alarm. And it actually comes from a phrase, alarme, to the weapon. And alarm, to the weapon. So this this is a cry, of course, back in the medieval ages when you would cry, oh, to the weapon, or like get the weapons, right? Alarm. That means watch out, right? This is you're ringing, you're literally ringing an alarm saying, oh, get your weapons, we're being raided. And then this phrase made it into English as a single word, alarm. Similar to curfew. Curfew is also a very weird word, right? In English. We all know what it means, right? You're not allowed to stay out past this hour, whatever the curfew hour is. But where does it come from? There is actually this word still exists, or this term still exists in French, um, and is still used in this sense in French. But in French, it comes from a phrase. It's used as a single word nowadays, I believe, but it comes from a phrase. Curfew, right? Comes from the French ouvre feu, right? Cover the fire. So it literally means when it's curfew, right? When you're supposed to go inside and uh, stay in the safety of your homes, you cover up all of the fires outside so that people can't see you, right? So that people can't, when it's night, that people don't know that there's a camp there or a town there, or maybe not a town, but like a small village or so, right? So that they can't find you and raid you. Not that kind. Right. Um, But that's the idea. And then this phrase, in a sense, made it into English as a single word. So there's a lot of very interesting like exchange happening between languages where you get like sometimes entire phrases turned into words and such. Um, to have an example, just because I'm on examples right now, and it's probably a bit more interesting than the high level theoretical stuff right now. As another example of another direction, right? English to Japanese. So in English, we have, yeah, I think that was slightly before fighter jets. Um, but yes, that is the idea. Yeah, that is the idea. So that you can't spot a village or a camp at night, or not as easily because there are no fires outside. Exactly, that's the idea. Um, so in English, right, we have this. Everybody knows Google. Not everyone loves Google. That's okay. Uh, I'm wary, but we use it, right? Google. And then this is a brand name, and from that we get the verb to Google, right? Which means to search something online, search for something online, not necessarily using the search engine Google, but just it's become so ubiquitous that we now have the phrase to Google something, right? Now here's an interesting bit in Japanese. This then becomes right, gu gu ru. Should probably make this into normal long there. Right? So this is the word. Same with this one. Google in Japanese is called this, right? Um, Guguru, which is just a phonetic um transformation of the word. I am. Oh yeah, I am. Indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Um, and the funny thing is in Japanese, and this is a pure coincidence, but it works perfectly. In Japanese, verbs end in ru. It's just their grammar, verbs in the infinitive and such, and in present tense, end in ru. And because of this coincidence, in Japanese, you can use guguru as a verb, just like in English. So in Japanese, you actually use this word as as a normal verb, just because of the coincidence that it happens to have the correct ending, so that people can immediately use it as a verb without having to change anything with the word itself, right? And that is a funny, or not a funny, but like a fascinating coincidence. Um, and it's it's really interesting to see like the ingenuity um of people using language, um and how where in English you have the verb from that from the brand name, and then in Japanese, oh, it just happens to work as well, and people actually do this. They use this guguru as the verb, and that's really cool to see, I think. Covered a lot of the canvas. already. Yeah. So this is kind of how, like, there is no set structure that we have to adhere to doing this. Let's go wherever the flow takes us. So we went to a lot of different places here. Is this interesting for people? I don't know. I guess I'm also looking for a little bit of feedback if people would actually be interested in this. Um, and if this is something to continue. Derailing is fine. Like, I don't have anything fixed planned. This is not a seminar, much less a lecture. This is, again, this is why I'm not calling it like lecture day or whatever, or seminar or whatever. This is just talk. We're this is like this is like a Viennese coffee house. We're in a Viennese coffee house, and we are just talking. We are just talking about some subject uh, as an impulse, right? Linguistics is the impulse, and then you guys have questions and comments, and then we just meander. And this is perfectly fine. Like, I don't want to yeah, I don't want to sit here and hold a lecture for 90 minutes, because then everyone will run away from me as fast as they can. Um, I want to just talk, and if you have like comments or questions, that means those are the points you are interested in, right? Those are the things that you can connect to your previous knowledge, and maybe add more things, add more information to what you already know, or maybe view the knowledge you already have in a new light. And that's very valuable. So um that's definitely a thing. Is Scots a language? Yes. Yes, it is. Um because it diverged several hundred years ago. Um if you look at uh and we're fortunate that we can do this. If you look at historical texts, um and compare modern Scots and modern English to each other, and to historical versions of the languages, you can see that Scots actually started diverging around the time of Middle English, which is, when was Middle English? It started at around 1100, all the way to roughly 13, 1400. That's that's Middle English, and you can see um, Scots as a language. It was a dialect back then, right? But that was six, seven, 800 years ago, and in that time, Scots has diverged. The reason it doesn't get fully recognized as a language sometimes is because of uh again, a lot of historical reasons. The cultural and economic and like military dominance of English, right, from England over Scotland, and the linguistic dominance of English in that. So Scots uh, took a lot of words from English, took a lot of structures from English, simply because English was the dominant and prestige language. So that's why it looks similar. But if you actually delve into it and delve into the history of it, you can see that Scots is its own language and has been for several centuries. Um, yeah, that's also a big thing. A language is a dialect with an army and a navy. Um, what is a dialect and what is a language is not a linguistic classification, because linguistically it's impossible or nearly impossible to confidently say that something is a dialect as opposed to a language. Those classifications are mainly uh, social and political, right? Um, for instance, Dutch, the language of the Netherlands. If you compare Dutch to Low German, which still exists today, uh, they are dialects of each other, right? But then no one would say that the people in Germany are speaking Dutch. They are speaking German, Low German. Right? Um, but then why is Low German, or why are the Low German varieties dialects of a language they are very, like, relatively far related to, High German? And why is Dutch its own language, or why are the Dutch varieties their own language group? Right? Why is that split there? Yes, that as well, but they are yeah, but then again, like, Franconian and Saxon at the end of the day are also related, right? Um, when the split exactly happened, again, so this is dialectal. Franconian and Saxon were also dialects early on, right? If you go far enough into history, yes, they were dialects of each other or of some other language, and then they split into a Saxon group, a Franconian group, and so on. So, um, but I do hope it illustrates a little bit why, like, that it's very socio political, right? That because there is a nation of the Netherlands that uses Dutch, um, that that this is now a language. Kind of off topic, but I find English has a suffix that denotes the word is related to a controversial situation. Um, which one are you talking? I'm not 100% sure. I can't think of one. Gate. Oh, of course. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, definitely. Yeah. That's just language uh, living. That's just language being alive. Yeah, it is fascinating, right? Um, that you got um, the Watergate scandal, right? And Watergate is just a name. It's just a name. It's a hotel. I think that was close to the waterfront or something, right? That's just the name of a hotel. And yes, history does make language go nuts. Um, and that's what's so fascinating about it. You get that's that's the two kinds of changes you get in language. You get big systemic changes, um, like if you've ever heard of vowel shifts or palatalization or sound merger or whatever. Those are big systemic shifts. But then you get small coincidences and small stories and anecdotes like this, where there is a single change in a language that you can only explain if you know the historical fact that accompanies it. Those trying to contain a controversy or gatekeep. Yes, that's okay. That's very clever. That's very clever. I like that. But yeah, so it's just the name of the hotel, and then you have a new suffix. Yes, just and gate doesn't even mean anything close to controversy, right? But because it is so intrinsically tied to this one political incident, that we now have a new suffix. Indeed. Hold on, it's getting a bit dark. I need to turn on my light real quick. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Yeah, exactly. Or back to Dutch politics. Yes, they really did. um the yeah, like especially as well like the um, the birth of like Belgium and Luxembourg as well, right? And then they having their own versions of the Germanic languages, um, and such is, and even France, right? French is only French because of Frankish influence, and Frankish is a German or a Germanic language, right? So there's a lot going on there, which is very fascinating, but also very complex. Dutch Low Saxon is basically a dialect of Dutch, even though they split off many centuries ago. Polish Low Saxon is technically the same language within the continuum, but is fully unintelligible to Dutch dialect. I can imagine, yes. So yeah, so the Saxon or Low Saxon spread out very wide, and then um, again, this is all about prestige languages. Um, like which language is the predominant language for whatever reason, because it was made the official language of a country or kingdom or county or anything, or because it's the language that the rich people speak or the royal people speak and so on. For whatever reason, um, a specific language is marked as prestige, and then all other languages interact with it, with the prestige. So either they have to um, move closer to it because uh yeah, because otherwise they won't be understood, or because just naturally by having to learn the prestige language and then using their own language they mix both, or they distance themselves from it intentionally, which also happens. But it is influence, and with Dutch on the one end and Polish on the other end, um and then there's Frisk. um I've heard that name. I don't know exactly which language that is, right? It's it's Frisian for Frisian. Okay, I should have guessed. Yeah. Yeah, Frisian is also an interesting. It's like this fringe language on the northern coast, um which is actually very closely related to English. It's one of the languages that's most closely related to English. Um but it's on the coast of the mainland. That's also very interesting. Um, just because this term came up, I want to quickly clarify. dialect continuum, I just want to do a quick clarification. That was too many. There we go. So dialect continuum. Um, what is a dialect continuum? So imagine you have two villages somewhere, right? It could be, I don't know, in the tip of Italy, like Sicily and Palermo and that region. You have two villages. One village speaks dialect A and the other language speaks dialect B. And these dialects are very, very closely related, right? The speakers of these two dialects don't notice any differences between these two, right? They when they meet up with each other for visiting, for trading, for whatever, right? They speak in their own dialect and they have no problem understanding each other. And they might not even notice that they're speaking different dialects, right? Um, yeah, the difference is mostly accent, or maybe, oh, these dudes call bread something funny, right? They use this funny word for bread, and we use this word for bread, but we all know what we're talking about. And then you go from village B to the next village over, and in that village they speak dialect C, right? And then when these two meet up, they have no problem talking to each other. They can understand each other. They might not even realize they're not speaking the same dialect, and so on, and so on, and so on, until you get to some village, maybe in northern Italy, southern France, right? And then if you suddenly take a person from here and move them all the way back here and tell them to speak to each other in their own language, they won't be able to understand each other anymore. They might recognize a word here and there. They might say, this kinda sorta sounds familiar ish, maybe, but they won't be able to communicate anymore. But there was never a clear cut anywhere in here. It's just a continuum of very slightly changing dialects, right? And these chains can be really long, can be very, very long. You could, um, maybe not as much nowadays, simply because there's been so much like centralized schooling and teaching the national language, the national dialect as the official one and such. So a lot of older dialects have died out, sadly. But you could say, if you go from, I don't know, southern Italy, right, along the coast, past Rome, and then across southern France, over the Pyrenees, Spain, and then all the way to Portugal, and you just hop from village to village, tiny village to tiny village, and you just take a taxi, right, with a local. That local will always be able to talk to someone in the next village, and then you take a taxi from that village to the next one, and that driver will be able to talk to someone in that village, and so on and so forth, all the way across. Or even something like from northern Italy through Austria, Germany, all the way up Denmark, Sweden, Norway, right? All the way to the very tip. You could conceivably have a dialect continuum again with the same process. Um, yeah, yeah, exactly. That's because the yeah, they were I mean, there was a lot of Russian, but yes, the local languages remained. So you could you could do that, or through China as well, with all the Chinese languages, right? All the way from the northern Manchuria, all the way down to like Canton and such. You could probably do the same thing. So there are these things exist in real life. And that's why it's so difficult to say this is a language and that is a dialect, right? Like where do you make a cut? You can't, because anywhere you make a cut, you are essentially just cutting across two very closely related dialects. If Dalmatian was still extant, you can go all the way from Croatia to Portugal. Hmm. Yeah. Yes. Um. Sadly, it's not. But yes. So that's because at the end of the day, that's where languages come from, right? It is these cuts. So you have like, oh, A and B are in one country, but C, D, and E are in another country. So suddenly, over many, many, many decades and centuries of centralized schooling and news reports using um, the official national language and such, you suddenly get uh, people where the dialects start merging into a bigger unified language, right? So that's what happens, right? So you have like Italy and France and Spain and Portugal, right? And that's how large super regional languages form. Um and Yeah, that's the process. So it, again, languages and the history of languages is tied very, very closely to politics and social movements, social change. Um, but again, languages like borders control people, and people control language, right? And that's how borders often control language, but not always. Yes, yes, exactly. There you can still find very close connections. Um, but yes, there might be a tiny continuum in between here, that crosses borders. Like if you look at Portugal, for instance, um, if you speak or Portugal and Spain, if you speak Portuguese, Niedersachsen, close to the Dutch border, they speak a dialect called Border Dutch. Very nice. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So border regions, definitely. Um, Something similar in Spain. Portugal, you speak Portuguese, and in Spain, you speak Castellan mainly. Like that's the official language. But if you go to the Spanish tip, just north of Portugal, so Spain, right? Spain is relatively square-ish, and then Portugal is this rectangle here, more or less. So, uh, exactly. That's the point I was getting to. Why is this not so? Over here, there is a dialect of Spanish called Galician. And if you speak Portuguese, you will be able to talk to someone who speaks Galician and vice versa. Because Galician is actually a dialect of, well, Portuguese. It's a Lusitanian language, right? Um, so this bit crosses borders, and you have this little corner of Spain where there is a local language that is closely tied, like really closely tied to Portuguese. Like if you look at a Galician text and a Portuguese text, you would say, or listen to speakers, you will say, yeah, those are dialects of each other, right? And then Spanish, like Castellan Spanish, is very, very different, relatively speaking, very, very different from Galician. So this is an example of where you have a dialect continuum going across borders. which still happens to the border regions and such. Also, because Galicia is very far away from Madrid, which is like somewhere here, right? So yeah, that's where dialects like this are able to survive. Yes, it does. Let's not get into that for now. Like let's not talk about Franco. Um, but it's just an interesting little fact about dialects crossing borders or remaining despite borders. Um, but yeah, dialect continuum, which explains a lot, right? If you understand this concept, it explains a lot of um, what what happened in history and what happens with languages and why some languages sound similar and what is going on and so on. So because at the end of the day, everything emerged from dialect. Everything. Every modern language and even historical languages that have gone extinct, they all came from uh, dialects, right? Why are there different Germanic languages? Well, there was a Germanic language, and the people who spoke that spread out over northern, central, and northern Europe and developed their own dialects, and now we have different Germanic languages, right? Why are there different Romance languages? Same thing. People who spoke Latin, um, sorry, I wouldn't go there. Thinking about the whole Iberian thing from the Goths to the merger of the Castile and Aragon. That as well. Yeah. Um, yeah, the Goths invading, and then of course the uh, North Africans, and I don't know, yeah, the Caliphate, where you had the Caliphate established in the southern Spain, which is where Portugal came from, by the way. That's what led to the creation of Portugal. Um, yeah, that's a very very colorful history, definitely. Um, and yeah, very several Spanish or Iberian kingdoms, Castile, Aragon, Catalonia, still Lusitania, which then became Portugal and such. Yeah, a lot of very vibrant history, definitely. A lot of like as long as people move through migration or invasion or whatever else, languages move with them. That's one. How long have I gone? 1.5 hours. I think I'm going to raise this as a last point, because 90 minutes is pretty long. Um, so I think at some point people's concentration might also just dip, and I have to save some for other Talk Tuesdays. So just as a final example of movements of peoples and with them the movement of languages, a very very interesting case is the language of the Sinti and Roma. Um, Get so many interesting pigeons and language exclaves of smaller European powers immigrating to. Yes, you do. You do. Pennsylvanian Dutch is a very famous example. Um, which, by the way, is not Dutch. It's German. It was German immigrants to the U.S. who went to Pennsylvania. Welsh communities in Argentine. Yeah, a lot of small exclaves of speakers of a language, or a lot of Cantonese speakers also moving to the U.S. Um, and then forming their own little community. Um, yes, exactly. But yeah, a very interesting point with the Sinti and Roma. Right, something English brought on themselves. True. Um, right. So the Sinti and Roma migrated a lot as a whole group. They throughout history they have migrated a very large distance. And if we look at their language or languages, we can say roughly where they were at what point in history. This is really fascinating. So we know that they probably came from somewhere in central India, right? So you have India. They came from somewhere in central India and then started migrating north out of India all the way across, right, the Middle East, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all the languages that are here until they got to Europe. And we know this because we can analyze languages and see, all right, the base language is a Central Indian language. But when they were here at a certain point in time in northern India, there was a specific change that happened to the North Indian languages that also appears in the Sinti and Roma language, but not in the languages in central India. And then they adopted this change, right, which happened at that time, and then moved on and just adopted more and more changes and vocabulary which existed at that point in time until they got to Europe. So this is super fascinating. You can trace like their path of migration relatively precisely, simply based on the features of the language, right? So they couldn't have been there any uh, later than a specific point because then they wouldn't have taken on this change in the language, right? They must have gotten there before this point, and then when the language around them changed, their language changed with it. Yes, exactly. They migrated like they are the true Indo-Europeans. They are the true Indo-Europeans. They covered the entire spectrum. Um, so and exactly. Um, so their language or languages carry a lot of history from all sorts of places. And you can look at that and see, okay, when they were here, they picked up this change. When they were here, they picked up this change, right? Oh, and they must have left this area uh, before then because they didn't get this change from the area that happened after they left, and so on. And that's very, very fascinating to be able to see things like, um, and that's one way, and that is the synthesis of this whole looking at humans through the lens of language. And that's really what linguistics is. You use the tool of language to understand humans. And I think that's that's a good ending point, right? This is we actually answered the question, what even is linguistics? Linguistics is looking at humans through the lens of language. There were some examples we had today. Um, and And there are definitely more examples, right? Linguistics is a broad field. Humans are complex, language is complex. There are many different ways to look at humans, language. Um, but we'll save those topics for another time or other Talk Tuesdays. I can't just babble on for 5 hours and then just fire off all of my ammunition at once. um, but yeah, I think this is a good note to end today's Talk Tuesday on, and I think this like 1.5 hours ish, close to 2 hours, is not a bad length. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. This was actually yeah, this roughly this length is I think is not bad. Um, I am definitely going to do more of these. These are amazingly fun. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. All right. And thank you so much, Golias, for asking all of these questions and having all of these comments and all of the advice earlier as well. Again, I really have to thank you for that. Um, so I'm glad you thought that. I'm really glad. Um, but I will do this. This is fun. Um, so I will make this a regular feature every Tuesday, Talk Tuesday. We won't always be talking about linguistics, right? There are other topics I want to talk about. There are other topics. Oh yeah, definitely, I will do that. If I don't follow, why am I not following you? Um, but yeah. Some other topics I want to talk about. Maybe other topics you guys want to not present. That's too much like a class, but are interested in, right? And then we can hash things out together. Um, yeah, I'm probably going to be doing other streams this week as well, playing some games and such. Uh, Next week Tuesday, barring real life. Always have to say that because my real life is a bit unpredictable right now. Thanks. I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, so I am planning to do this regularly every Tuesday as long as my rather unpredictable real life doesn't get in the way. Um and yeah, so thank you all very much for being here and listening to me ramble. Um let's see, we should find someone to raid. That is cool. And I do want to see if there's anyone uh there actually, yes, there is someone. Let me just check that it's the ending stream. Oh no, just started, just started. Ha. Awesome. So we are going to raid a streamer called, and I still have to learn how to properly raid. I never know where to put in the raid command. Um so that I don't end up like double triple hosting someone accidentally and such. We are going to raid Obel Gray. Raid, raid, yes, raid Obel Gray. Does this work? Yes, it does. So Obel is a very comfy streamer, but very, very engaging, very cool person, and I do hope that you will enjoy her stream. She's doing Little Nightmares 2, so kind of a horror game, but um, if that's not yours, so it's okay. But I do hope that you will enjoy the stream, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.